Hey friends, welcome back to the next video. Now, before we dive into the next topic, which is the customer classification, which is more advanced DAX, of course, let's actually rename our page properly. So let's call this as actually insights. So let's call this DAX or no DAX in my case, right? So like that. Of course, again, feel free to name this different, but at least now you know if you want to look up the resource section and take a look at the Power BI Advanced Training number 2 file, you know that this is basically the page I'm referring to. So let's click on new page and then let's actually figure out how we can classify our customers. So how can we do this? Well, we could classify them based on any kind of metric. And in my case, I'd like to do this based on the sales. So I could say, I'm ranking my customers based on the sales amount, which they have generated for us. And then I can say, for instance, my top 5 customers, these are the top customers. Then let's say the customers between a ranking of 6 and 20 regarding the sales could be the average customers, and all customers which have a sales ranking less than 20 should be actually maybe the bad customers. Okay, the name of course can be chosen by you, but this is basically the idea behind that. How can we achieve this? Now, to do this, we first need, let me just make this smaller and this as well. At first, we need some kind of, in this case, a table, helper table, which allows us to classify the customers. To do this, because we do not have the table already, I can here go under Home and say I'd like to enter a manual table under Enter Data. And here, this table will be the, in this case, let's say, Customer Classification Table. So let's name it properly. Let's say Customer classification, and then TBL. And now for the first column, this would be, for instance, here the customer or the classification name. So I can say, maybe let's say classification, like that. And then I have a minimum value here. Let's call this min. And I also have a maximum value. Call this max. Now, the table structure is like that I could say the classification is, or the customer type is top customer, if the ranking is, let's say, between 1 and 5. And then let's say if the ranking is between 6 and 20, it should be, let's say, average customer, average, let's say here from 6 to 20. And then starting from 21, I say this is a bad customer, because this customer is not ordering enough, right? So top, average, and bad. And let's say here starting from 21, and this is up to, let's say, 1000. I just need to use a very high number here just to make sure that I include all the customers. And we already know that we only have 89 distinct customers, so obviously I'm covering with the high amount here all the additional customers. So no customers gets lost in here. And this is basically the table setup we need. So we have the classification name itself, we have the minimum and the maximum, and now we can load this table into our model in order to use it. So just a second, the calculation gets applied and the new table gets loaded into the model. And here we go, customer classification table. So now we can actually use a DAX expression and evaluate the ranking of the customer based on a specific measure or metric. In our case, it is the total sales, and then classify the customer in one of the categories. Also, let's have maybe a closer look, just briefly, to the new table we have created. Let's get rid of that. And let's actually select the customer classification. And you see it's a small table, which we manually entered, and it has exactly the values as you've seen before. Okay, so now let's go back to the report view and create our measure. So let's right click on the measures table and say we would like to create a new measure. And this measure is simply classify customers. Classify customers. Of course, as always, you're free to use any kind of name you want. Just make sure that you understand what you're basically doing here. Let me go to new line, Shift Enter, and say I would like to calculate something. So use the calculate function. I want to calculate the total sales. Here we go. From the measures table, which is in this case the second one, this one. And again, I'd like to refer to the fact that you can also refer to the specific measure only without referring to the table if you don't want to. So calculate the total sales. And now what do we want to do? Well, let me evaluate that. At first, I need a filter expression. A filter expression because I want to filter my data. So what exactly do I want to filter? Well, I would like to filter my customers, right? Because I want to classify them into buckets. So top customers, average customers, and in this case, bad customers. So I will use a unique list of customer names, which can be done by using the values function. So values, then referring to from the orders TBL, so from order TBL, the customer company. Here we go. So now let me close this, which gives us a unique list of customer companies. Now we want to filter this unique list. That is why we wrapped the filter around the values. And this is why we now need to have a filter expression here. Now the filter expression, we will use the count rows function. Count rows simply, as the name here implies here, and it states here, counts the number of rows in a table. So we use count rows. The table actually we are referring to is again a filter table. So we say filter. Now for this filter, we will use our customer classification table. So I'll say customer classification table, this one here. And we want to count all the rows inside this table, but it should be modified by filters. So let me actually close it, parenthesis, comma here. And let's say the filter should be based on the ranking of the customer. So we say rank X. And for this iteration, so this ranking, we will use again the customers, but we want to make sure that we use all customers. That's why we apply all inside the ranking function. And by the way, also in the future, if you use rank X function, most often it is in combination with all or all except. Just as a little hint here, so also in the future when you create formulas. So rank X all, again, what kind of column we are referring to? Well, we are referring to, in this case, from the order TBL, the customer company. So this one here. So please give us all the customer companies and do a ranking on them. So here we go. And a ranking based on what? Well, based on the total sales, right? So total sales, here we go, this one. And we want to do the ranking descending because the customer with the highest amount of sales should be, of course, number one. So that is that. And we want to say that this here, the filter expression should be greater or equal to from the classification. So customer classification table, right? And remember, there is this table, customer classification. And let's just see what we are referring to. I think we are referring to the, where is it? The minimum is the last one. So let me zoom in again. Okay. So it doesn't display this at all if I zoom in. Hopefully that would be changed in the future. But we are referring to the minimum should be greater or equal to the minimum. And we also know that we can use the double ampersand to do an AND condition in here. And we simply check the same expression one more time, that the rank X of, in this case, all the customer company from the orders table, so orders TBL, customer company, here it is. This, let me just close parenthesis here, and there the total sales is the expression, sales, here we go. This should be, in this case, valued descending here as well. Close this parenthesis here, and say this should be less or equal, in this case, to the maximum. So customer classification table, and the maximum is, I think, this one here. So let's just see, the maximum is here, the third. Okay, so go with the third. Let me just select it here, this one. And then let's close this here and also close the count rows function. And then for the filter expression, we say that this should be greater than 0. And then we can also close here the filter function, and then we close the calculate function. So this is a lot, of course, yeah, to devour. I guess that, I get that. But let's actually first maybe select it here, everything, Control-C to copy it. And let's go to our formatting option to have it a little bit nicely format. And that's exactly what I meant when I said the longer the DAX formula, the better it is to actually format it correctly, because it's much easier to read then, like that, right? At least from my point of view. So let me copy this and let me go back to the Power BI report in here and let me paste it inside. So that is what the formula looks like in here, at least. So what is this doing actually? Well, we basically have created, if you remember correctly, let me just evaluate it first. Okay, so we are good to go. And then let's just see. So we created a customer classification table, right? So remember that if I go to the data view here and tick this option, we see that we have a table in here and it has a minimum value and a maximum value. And what we basically do in our formula is simply check whether the ranking of the customer based on a specific metric, in our case the total sales, is greater or equal to the minimum and less or equal to the maximum. We can use the equal sign because we have thresholds here from 1 to 5, from 6 to 20, so 5 and 6, they do not overlap, right? Otherwise you need to be careful with the greater or equal sign, because you can only use it on one of the sides. But here we have 5 and then 6, so they are not intersect, and this is why we can say less or equal to maximum, and here greater or equal to minimum. So basically 6 is included in average, and 5 is still included in top. So if I go back to the report view and take a look at the classified customers here, so that's basically our measure, it's quite a lot. So we will calculate the total sales, but only the total sales for these specific customer boxes, right? Which we specified in here. So we say, please use a unique list, so values of customer companies, but filter this list. Filter this list and make sure that this expression, quite long, is greater than 0. Count rows only counts the rows in the specific table, so in customer company table. And the count rows here is based on a table, which is this filter table, which makes sure that twice the ranking here is simply checked whether the ranking is, in this case here, greater or equal to the minimum, let's say for the top customer, greater or equal to 1, and at the same time the ranking is here less or equal to the maximum. So for the top customers, less or equal to 5. And the ranking is based on the total sales measure. And this is why exactly this gives us now the buckets for our three, or basically classifies our customers into 3 buckets, which we have defined in our helper table. And to check this, we can now visualize that here, of course. So we could say, let's say we use the dates table. So go dates here, select the date. And then we can see here a table, but let's actually go maybe with a bar chart like that. And then we can say we would like to see actually the classified customers. So by default, of course, we get exactly the same chart as we had before. That's correct with the total sales. But now, if we use from the customer classification here, the classification itself, for instance, we can drag this into the legend, drag it inside here, then you'll see that now we got different values for the average, for the bad, and the top customers. And this could give us some insights. Like for instance, if we go to the formatting pane and also add here the data labels like that, we would now see, for instance, that our top customers here, so the first 5 customers based on the sales ranking, contributed in this case 73,000 of the total 2020 sales, or 202,000 of the 2021 sales, which is quite a lot, because think of it, these are only the concentrated top 5. And all the other ones of the 89 customers are actually in the second and the third, right? So these are from 6 to 20, and these are all above 20. So almost, let's say, 69 customers actually contributed almost the same as our top 5 customers. That's an insight you can get directly here regarding the DAX measure we have created. Or maybe, let's actually copy this, paste it, and instead of using the bars next to each other, maybe it's easier to, or better to understand, if we actually use, in this case, a stack chart. So if we say we'd like to see this as a 100% stacked, so we changed it here, and now we can see here as a percentage numbers here. What is the contribution of our top customers based on the year? We can see here it's almost 30%, 2021 it's even better, almost 34%, and in 2022 here almost 36%. So this, for instance, could give us an indication, okay, we should actually focus on the top customers, because based on a year-on-year comparison, actually the the part or the share of the sales to the total customers is actually increasing, which could be a valuable insight which you can get exactly like that. Of course, we also need to take into account that the 22 data only contains the first 3 months, or the first 5 months, sorry. So obviously there's still a lot of data missing, and you can't compare the full year 2021 to only the first 5 months. I get that, but still, it's already an indication. Obviously something is going on. And of course, you could also drill down further if you would like to do that and compare this on a quarterly or even monthly level if you want to do that. Of course, this also depends on the business model you have, but this is basically how that works. Okay, so I know this is a quite advanced formula, but now you have it also in your war chest, in your Power BI war chest, and can try this out yourself, of course. And feel free to use this in any other kind of visual. It's just an example on how to apply this, okay? So that's it actually for this video. The final thing I might do is here directly, I name this here customer classification. So we're good to go. And let me just save this here for now. And then that's actually it for the video. So thanks a lot for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one. Until then, best guys.